You are listening to Amplify Your Success Podcast, episode 171. And today I've got a special guest joining me that'll reveal one of the most powerful tools to upgrading and reprogramming your subconscious mind for more success. So let's get started.
Welcome to the Amplify Your Success Podcast. Hey, are you a thought leader, creative entrepreneur, or change maker and want to magnify your impact? Boost influence while creating a financial abundance? Stay tuned for today's inspiring episode with your host, Melanie Benson.
Hello there, inspired entrepreneurs and business leaders. It's your host, Melanie Benson, Profit Amplifier. We are airing this episode at a really interesting time in our world. So wherever you are listening to this in the world, the one thing I know for sure is you know what coronavirus is, and you have probably been invited to start doing social distancing and self-imposed isolation. So what better time to catch up on a lot of podcasts, right? I know that this is really a scary time for a lot of people. There's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of fear and a lot of panic. And what I do know without a shadow of a doubt is this is one of the most important times in our lives where we need to have the right mindset to get through this time and still thrive. Now, if you're dealing with someone who has illness, you've been personally affected by the virus and the impact of that, my heart goes out to you. Please know that I have all the compassion in the world for you and what you're going through. And I know there's a lot of people that would really love to have access to some better resources to keep that fear from taking over their lives. And so if this is where you find yourself, you are going to love today's episode. I'm talking with Carl Hunter, who has one of the most extraordinary techniques for really clearing out a lot of old programming and creating better programs that attract wealth and success. So I'm super excited to share this with you. And on another note, we are doing some live trainings in the free Amplify Your Success community right now. Because what I found is this is a time where we all need to band together and share resources, share mindsets, share processes, and really just kind of hold each other up while we navigate so much uncertainty. I know it's very easy to get paralyzed by fear. As a matter of fact, I was just reading a post from one of my mastermind members who was really struggling with feeling paralyzed, and not necessarily from fear, but because there's so much going on and a lot of change and kids being home from school. And so what I wanted to do is put together some different trainings, because now's the time. If you find your business is being impacted, your work is not the same, maybe you had a lot of events scheduled, or you were going to be on the road speaking, or maybe just things are changing. We don't want to move into panic. We want to move into resourcefulness. And so double down on your training. So you want to tap into those free trainings, head on over to amplifyyoursuccesscommunity.com. I've been tackling everything from how to get your mindset in the right place and some strategies to deal with the impacts of this global pandemic, all the way through how to really get your message out in a bigger way and tap into some proven techniques to share your message on podcast interviews, online summits, and other virtual messaging platforms that allow you to continue to touch your ideal clients and inspire them to work with you in a more powerful way. So if you want to take advantage of that, it's all for you over in Amplify Your Success community. Just join the free community and you'll see the Amplify workshop series. You can, it'll be right at the top of the group. Now, let's get into today's subconscious mind training. If you've ever felt like something's in the way of achieving the level of success you imagine, or even things that you see other people so easily doing, it may be time to reprogram your subconscious mind for success. I want to introduce you to my guest today, who's Carl Hunter. He's an artist, an entrepreneur, a transformation coach, and a subconscious mind programming expert. He's the creator of the amazing new MindPower Acceleration Technology called MindFlavors. He began the self-development journey as a young child by seeking ways to improve his own behavior in order to get better results in all the areas of his life. And then in 1987, he started pursuing it seriously when he discovered a method to reprogram his own subconscious mind. And this led to him achieving his dreams by the age of 31, traveling the world, getting into the diamond business, and moving to the Virgin Islands, where he spent many years enjoying the tropical life. In early 2015, while continuing to pursue faster and more powerful methods for transformation, Carl discovered some ancient power secrets. And using these newfound ideas, he's invented a revolutionary technology that's trumped all of his previous techniques for harnessing the power of our subconscious mind. Carl, thanks for joining me today. And I got to tell you, I'm sure everyone listening in today is going, oh my goodness, like, how do I get my hands on this? So, I think if you've ever done any kind of mindset work and you retrained the way you think and reprogrammed the way the neurons fire, you immediately know how powerful this kind of work can be. So I'm excited to dig into this with you.
Well, it's great to be here, Melanie. Thanks so much for having me today.
You're welcome.
You're so right. The reason why it's so significant that we reprogram our subconscious mind is because the majority of what we're experiencing in life is based on the programming that was written when we were children. So what we believe is reality and how the world is, those beliefs that we develop when we're in those impressionable years growing up end up influencing our behavior at every turn. Every single aspect of our behavior has to be filtered through that belief structure, and it has to match up with it. So if our belief says the world is a wonderful place, then everything's going to line up accordingly. But if we have some beliefs that are limiting, which are usually the most common ones that we pick up along the way, then those end up affecting our ability to express ourselves in the normal ways and have the success that most of us are seeking.
Can we talk about that for a minute? Because I know I certainly found a lot of my own breakthroughs in very subtle things that happened as a child that my child brain kind of, locked in as this idea that was true. And when we start to do this kind of work, I know oftentimes we've got to rewire the way that child interpreted things. But you actually started your self-development journey as a child. That's really young, right? Like, most of us are not conscious to any of this till we're much older. We're bumping up against our limits. Would you share a little bit about how, like, as a child, you fell into this work and this became, in a way, your catalyst?
Yes, what happened was it all happened kind of organically. I started noticing that I would, in my interactions when I was a young child, I started noticing that sometimes I would have interactions where I would lose my emotional balance, if you will. And it didn't make me feel good. And so I would say, well, why did I do that? Why did I say those things? Or why did I act in that way? Because it didn't always make sense to me afterwards. And I didn't like how it felt. And so I started saying, well, what can I do to change this? And I would keep repeating the same types of experiences. And so the next logical thing for me in my mind to do was to see if I could track what I was doing and give myself reminders so that in the moment when I was experiencing it, I would remember, oh, I've decided to behave in a different way now when this type of circumstance comes up. And it was such a long process, but what I did was I remember creating lists. Well, I had a master list that I created of all the different things that were important to me and how I treated other people and what I did throughout the day and how I lived my life. And I had that list, and then every night before I'd go to sleep, I would review that list and I would put a little check mark in the column if I handled those situations the way that I was really looking to do it. I mean, from the right perspective. And I didn't realize at the time, but I was doing a lot of things automatically that were putting me on a path to success in this area. And that's just a really basic way that I got started. There are many, many ways of really dialing that in and tweaking that to where you can truly just write your own ticket. You can truly describe the reality that you'd like to experience and have it happen for you quickly, as quickly as overnight.
Mm. I'm personally I'm obsessed with these kinds of technologies because I can see how powerful they are. What do you think is a sign as our listener is listening in today and they're curious about the subconscious programming and they're starting to wonder to themselves like, okay, so what might be going on in my life as a sign that I could use some of this subconscious programming to move me towards my goals and dreams?
Well, the interesting topic, I think one of the most interesting conversations around this really is about the resistance, because
Mm.
you can look at that word and that term in a number of different ways. And I have learned to look at this in a really positive way and more of a mathematical way. When you look at the function of the subconscious mind, it's designed to resist change. It's designed to create stability in our world. And we could have a whole deep conversation about that, but let's just look at it from the mechanical standpoint. So it's designed to keep us moving forward and having some kinds of safety precautions and protections to maintain this stability in this three-dimensional space that we're living in. And so resistance isn't a bad thing. However, it can be the very thing that gets in the way of someone changing their reality. Our reality is not fixed, and that's something that we've kind of been taught in a different way. When we really understand who we are and what our abilities are, and you start to get into using your subconscious mind to bring forth your abilities, you begin to quickly see that reality is not fixed, and we can change anything that we would like to change in our experience if we can believe it. But believing it is not, when I say if we can believe it, most people will think, well, that we're talking about the conscious mind, and I'm talking about the subconscious mind. The beautiful thing is, it doesn't require any real work. You don't have to convince yourself like you would with your conscious mind to believe something to make it happen. All you have to do is implant that belief into your subconscious with a process in a way that will bypass the critical aspect of the mind and go into the subconscious, because the subconscious is like a computer. And when you give a command to your computer, when you tell your computer, type this, it all happens with a keystroke. But when you give that computer specific commands, it simply carries out the actions that you tell it to do. It doesn't reason. It doesn't say, are you sure you want to do this? If you do this, it's going to type this word. And, it doesn't question you all over the place about what you're going to do, because it's not reasoning. It's simply executing the commands. And that's the way that the subconscious works as well. So if we can communicate properly with the subconscious and get it to align with what we know to be what we would like to experience as our reality from our conscious perspective today, then it lines up and it starts to work in our favor and use all of its wonderful abilities to draw to us the circumstances and events that will match the new reality that we would like to experience.
So let me shorthand this, because what you're saying is so important. What I think you just said is the subconscious mind basically does what it's programmed to do. And if you are not experiencing the results in an area of your life that you really believe you want, chances are your subconscious mind is programmed differently, or it's, it needs to be reprogrammed to do what you want it to do. Did I get that right?
Exactly, right on. In fact, the easy way to look at this is everything in your outer world is a mirror to your inner world. And it requires really taking 100% responsibility for your reality if you are serious about being the creator of your experience, the conscious creator of your experience. Because if it's true that everything in your outer world is a mirror of your inner programming, then, and you can change that, then whose responsibility is it if you're not seeing exactly what you'd like to see or experiencing what you'd like to experience? Now, I like to kind of give some additional perspective on that. When I say whose responsibility is it, I'm not saying is there blame here, because this isn't about blaming or anything like that. It's simply about saying, well, if I am the creator and I can create anything I choose, and it's up to me to decide what that is, then it's my responsibility to make that decision. That's really
so
what it is.
ultimately, if I want different results, I can't expect something outside of me to make that happen, but I could take ownership and reprogram my subconscious mind to help me align with that.
Precisely. And we are all trained in this world to pretty much go out in the external world and make things happen, and continue to persist, and bang things into place. And while that can be effective, it is the hard way. And I believe, just to kind of put things in perspective, I believe what ultimately happens when we have success in something is because no matter what it is, it's because we're aligned. And a person can be aligned simply by using an easy technique to tell the subconscious to be aligned with that. Or a person can be aligned by stumbling and falling down, and then stumbling and falling down again, and doing that over and over and over again. And eventually saying, you know what, I've done this so many times that I deserve to actually succeed now. You see the difference?
Yeah, it's very powerful. So let's say we know it's time to start reprogramming our subconscious mind. And maybe we could even focus in on a common area for a moment, like take something that someone listening in today might be dealing with. Let's say they've got a goal that they've set over and over and over again. It could be a money goal or something they've wanted to do in their business, and they've repeatedly failed at attempting it, right? So they've kind of like been building up this evidence, like, I don't know if this is for me. How could they reprogram their subconscious mind to achieve that goal?
Well, I use a writing process that I've been doing for about 32 plus years now that is super powerful. It's very easy to do, and you can literally program specifically what you'd like to experience, and it can work as fast as overnight. So there's a process that you do that is, uh, if you do it in a certain way, there's a real powerful synergistic effect that happens. So each one of these details is critical and important into getting the maximum amount of output result from the process. But essentially what you're doing is you're telling your subconscious mind exactly what the experience you would like it to be. So here's how, earlier I said that your outer world is a mirror of what's on the inside. So I like to use the outer world as my gauge, if you will, to see where I am on that particular subject. And from observing what's going on in the outer world, I can reverse engineer what I'm seeing, or reverse what I'm seeing, and engineer it in a way that it's creating the reality that I would like to see. So if, for example, if a person's having challenges in their personal relationships, such an easy thing to fix. All you do is you handwrite in cursive just before you go to sleep that all of my personal relationships are working out beautifully now. Okay, so now there's a key distinction. There are a number of important factors here. Writing in cursive, I'll explain why. But there's a key distinction here. That's really important to understand. When we're working with the subconscious mind, it's important to note that it's a different part of our mind. It's a different part of who we are. It's a different aspect of who we are than our conscious mind. So our conscious mind has beliefs and our subconscious mind has beliefs. And so when we are doing what I call power declarations, when you're writing these things to program your subconscious mind, you don't have to consciously believe that it's true. All you have to do is feel into that experience and tell your subconscious mind that that is the new reality. In fact, the more you can turn it over to your subconscious, the better. It's helpful if you can get your conscious mind on board as well, but the process works whether your conscious mind is on board or not. The most important thing is when you're programming your subconscious mind like this, is to have the perspective of, oh, I don't have to actually believe that this is what I'm experiencing today in order to write this and turn it over to the computer, which is my subconscious, which is going to carry out all of the details. Does that make sense?
Totally. You're basically giving your subconscious mind a script to follow.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about, we're using language about reprogramming our mind. And by the way, I believe 100% in what you're sharing here, that it's a very powerful tool. But is there any times where maybe someone might bump up against, like, because I know sometimes people tell me, like, well, Melanie, I don't really believe that. So if I write it, it feels false, and then it feels weird, right? Like, and so sometimes people have stuff come up about this step you're giving us right here. What would you counsel them around this if they're like, I don't believe it. It's not. I'm not there yet. So how could I write it?
I love that. That's such a great question, and it really is where the art of this comes in. And I've spent decades working these details through exactly what you're asking here, and because there is that level of, well, how do I fine tune this so that I get better results with my subconscious listening to and following what I'm telling it to do? And so I found that there are a number of different ways in how you're constructing these power declarations that that make it easier to accept, make it easier to even with your conscious mind. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. So if a person's saying, "Well, what's something that you would like to give me an idea of something that someone would like to change?"
Let's say somebody wanted to change their financial situation. They wanted to increase the prosperity flowing in their life, but they've really struggled with this.
Okay, so uh, let's say you're going to write something like my financial income increases significantly each day. That would be a great thing for the subconscious to be on autopilot doing, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so but maybe the conscious mind isn't buying it, saying, well, I don't know if I can get on board with that. So an easy way to get around that is to make it a choice. When you're making it a choice, and you're declaring it rather than affirming it. This is why I call them power declarations rather than affirmations. It's simply a shift in perspective, because you can declare something and then the subconscious doesn't have any way to, or even the conscious doesn't have any way to argue with that. You can say, this is what I'm choosing to do now. There's no argument there. But if you say, I have $10 million in my hands right now, the conscious mind can argue with that. If you
Great
say,
distinction.
but you can say, I choose to attract $10 million now. I choose to have $10 million in my bank account. Well, again, the subconscious and the conscious has a hard time arguing with that. A lot easier time just simply carrying out that activity and that action to match that behavior. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. This is a great distinction. And I love what you're saying, that the subconscious mind can't argue with it, right? Like, and the logical mind can't argue with I choose, right? You can choose it. It's like,
Exactly.
but it's not the same as I am this, which I think you're right. Like, this is where a lot of times these affirmations fall apart for people, is they are like, but I'm not. So I love this process. This is super powerful. Okay. So We want to take an area and at night before we go to bed, writing with cursive what your intention is, using things like I choose, right, instead of I am, so that your mind can maybe get past some of those subtle resistance areas. Now, you mentioned earlier that there is a reason for the cursive.
Yes. So just to continue on with that, what you're saying, you can choose to, you can align with, you can attract. These are all different types of ways, and there are many, many more that you can bring those things into your reality without having to, by simply going around that little critical mind that wants to say, wait a minute, that's not true. So the reason why we use cursive is because it's more of a right brain activity, and the right brain activities, the more artistic, creative side of the brain, is much more receptive. It allows these ideas to come in to the subconscious more easily, because the left brain is much more analytical and logical, and it's going to do that whole, wait a minute, can I accept this kind of a thing? Whereas the right brain, it's just a lot more flowing and allows those things to come in. So by using that flowing action of writing cursive with your pen, it becomes like a work of art.
That makes perfect sense. And this work of art, using the creative mind, again, creativity is a place where things are created. So
Exactly.
if we're
Exactly.
creating, again, we have to, it can help bypass that logic mind going, but it doesn't exist already. Yeah, that's very profound. Is there anything else we need to know about these steps around reprogramming our subconscious mind?
Well, always write in the positive. And I do have all of this outlined in an ebook that I'd be happy to offer to your listeners for free, and they can see all the details exactly how to do it. But basically, you're going to be programming things in the positive. You never want to use the negative, because the subconscious doesn't really register the negative aspect of it. It only registers the vibration of the thing. So if you say, I do not get angry, it's only going to register get angry and put the emphasis on that. So rather than do that, you have to reverse the way you speak about these and the way you declare about these, and say, I choose to be happy all the time. And the
That's powerful.
one of the most important parts of this, because, and this really is a conversation that is an ongoing one, and it shows up in so many different ways, and I'm circling back to the subconscious resistance, because anytime we're changing, imagine that your life is, everything around you, instead of air, it's all like gelatin, and every time you had to move, there's something in front of you that you have to move out of the way to progress forward. That's kind of how the subconscious resistance works. It keeps everything from a belief standpoint in this solidified gelatin state. And so we're all in this state. And so when you say, well, I'm choosing to create something bigger, well, you're going to be moving, and things are going to change, things are going to shift. And on such a subtle level like that, that's resistance. That's what the resistance is. So it's not a bad thing. It's simply a law of nature. When you're shifting and changing, there's going to be something that's going to show up that has to be moved out of the way. A lot of these things can happen automatically, but sometimes that resistance is really strong. It's actually for your benefit in the big picture. But if we don't get past the resistance, then we can't, and then nothing happens, and nothing changes. So it's really important to note that the resistance is going to show up in a lot of ways that may seem really strange, and at the time it might seem really logical, but you might, I've heard so many times someone say something as, I'll ask them if they did their writing, and they'll say, you know what, my pen ran out and I couldn't find another pen to write, and so they didn't do their writing. That's a form of resistance.
Hmm. Yes, excuses, derailers, all of those things that seem to kind
And
of
they're
get in
always
the way,
convincing.
that feel a little beyond your control,
E-
oftentimes are a sign you're in resistance.
Yes, and they're always very convincing, and and
Oh,
and you can,
totally.
and the more it always makes perfect sense, and you can really get your logical mind to stand behind them, and that's when you can recognize that and say, you know what, this kind of sounds like resistance. I'm going to do this process anyway, because if you don't do the writing, nothing will change. When you do the writing, things will change, and your subconscious knows that. It knows that better than your conscious mind does. And so it's going to try to trick you to say, oh, you're too tired tonight. You don't have to do that. What can it really do if you're just writing this sentence? Is it really going to make a difference? These are all tricks of the subconscious resistance. So that's the first step, is breaking through that. Now, I recommend that you use the writing process to help yourself break through that process by programming yourself to easily do this writing process each night, just before I go to sleep. Say, I easily do this writing process each night, and I experience wonderful, life-changing benefits from doing this. You can program yourself to have that. And now tomorrow, the next night, your subconscious is going to say, hey, this is the new program. You're going to do this writing because this is wonderful, and it really makes you feel good, and it really makes things happen in a wonderful way in your life.
Yes, that is really powerful. I'm kind of giddy. I'm excited for our Amplify community to put this into action. And so I want to usher you a challenge as you listen in today. I want you to think of an area that you've been experiencing resistance around. And you maybe have felt this repeated attempts to accomplish something, and yet, there's a gap and it's not coming through. And maybe they're together. Maybe you're having the resistance around doing the thing differently, whatever it is. I want you to choose something, and I want you to try this technique that Carl's teaching us and commit every night. Is there a certain number of days that we need to do this writing exercise, Carl, or is it just you keep doing it until it becomes real?
Well, that's a really good question, because there are a lot of different nuances in this process, and everyone is a little bit different. I do recommend that you stick with a focus for 30 days.
Okay.
However, at the same time, I'll tell you that you can get overnight results with this. You can write something one time, and the very next day it shows up. And I have done this many, many, many times, and so many other people. So that is possible. But sometimes we might have more resistance on a particular topic than another. So you can approach it from a variety of different angles. You can talk about it in different ways and program your mind to accept the success in that area in a variety of different ways. And more sustained focus when you're looking at a particular area will produce bigger results. You can know that you can get results literally overnight. And at the same time, when you persist with this and continue with it, you'll see momentum building, a snowballing effect, if you will.
Powerful. I love this. Okay. So I would love it if you'd share with our community how to get your ebook. And then I've got a couple last questions for you.
Sure. You can get the ebook at mindflavors.com/ebook.
Nice and simple. Great. And so inside the book, you're going deeper into how the MindFlavors technology works, how the writing process works. Is there anything else you want us to know about this very I'm very excited about the book, by the way. I love these kinds of books, but is there anything else we want to know about the book?
So in the ebook, there are also a number of templates in there. I kind of break it down and explain the core beliefs, the discussion about core beliefs and why they're so important to work out initially, because you can really get to the root of a lot of things by cleaning up your core beliefs around uh, how you believe you deserve to experience life and your world. So there are templates in there, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I give you all the details of exactly how to do it. And then if you would like to take things even further and explore the new technology that I've invented that does a lot of this on autopilot in a faster, very highly accelerated manner, then you can book a private screening with us, and we'll actually allow you to experience the technology yourself.
That's exciting. Love that. All right. Well, make sure you guys download mindflavors.com/ebook and work this process. Like, really, like, make a commitment to reprogram this part of your mind. So here's my follow-up question for you, Carl. I know, at least in my own experience and having been doing this work for 20 plus years now, there are times when you would reprogram the subconscious mind and all of a sudden this area starts to flow properly, but somehow you kind of have a reset and go back to your old programming. Do you know, like, what is going on for someone if they're having that happen, and how do they get back on track if this comes up?
Well, usually when you're programming your subconscious mind, that you experience that less than any other approach that I'm aware of, because the conscious mind is only responsible for most people about 1% of the influence of what direction we go in a day, because we're running 99% of it is running on autopilot from our subconscious belief. So when you're programming your subconscious mind, that doesn't happen as much. It becomes non-existent in your world, because you have control over that. And when you realign your subconscious mind, it doesn't trigger you to go backwards. It stays with the new program.
So ultimately, you've not really reprogrammed the subconscious mind. Maybe you've just convinced your logical mind to get on board with something.
Yes, and what's significant about the subconscious mind is it is carrying out so many activities that are such highly influential parts of our experience. They go way beyond what our conscious mind is aware of. For example,
Mm.
most communication is unconscious. That means that we're not aware of it with our conscious mind. So it goes beyond just body language. I mean, we could have a whole nother conversation about how much we are all connected and how much we are communicating through these airwaves, if you will, so that when we show up in person, it is not the first interaction. We've already got a momentum in a direction that's happening. Have you ever met somebody for the first time, and or just encountered someone and for the first time, and you either really have an affinity for them, or someone that you have just the opposite for?
Yeah, definitely.
That communication has been going on before you actually met up physically. And this is how the subconscious works. This is why it can seem magical. I say this to people all the time. It can really seem magical because your conscious mind is used to doing hard work to make things happen. And hard work doesn't mean anything with this perspective. Hard work just means hard work. It does not mean you're going to get a better result. In fact, usually it means the opposite result. You do things the easy way when you program, you use leverage, you program your subconscious mind, you turn over all the details to the team, I say, and that's your subconscious mind. The team takes care of all of those details. This is the way to do things with big leverage. Make big things happen because your subconscious is dialed into things that go way beyond our conscious understanding. And then it looks like it's magic. It looks like things just line up and pop in and show up, and people say, wow, why are you so lucky? It's not about luck, it's about alignment.
Hmm. This is really good. I'm so grateful that you have joined me today. I want to wrap up with a kind of going back to Carl and how Carl's gotten where he is today, because obviously you've been studying this a long time. You've had different business adventures over the years, and you've had your own journey. What do you think was your biggest, maybe even like the bold move or something that you like was really like a big aha that allows you to use what you use, this technology, but apply it successfully to your business?
Well, I would say the biggest aha was when I came to the awareness that what we experience in the outer world has nothing to do with external things like I thought it did. And when I realized that I could change things by simply using some of these simple techniques to shift something inside of me that that the power is within me, and the power is within me to make the outer world change. And that was revolutionary. And that was the beginning of my whole quest in this direction. And it's just been a joyful, exponentially expanding ride ever since.
Well, that's a really great aha to have. Well, thank you for illuminating us to the power of our subconscious mind and how relatively simple it really is. It's just, again, it's that consistency, being really consistent with a practice that has proven results. And again, I want to inspire you to put this into action. Get the book, mindflavors.com/ebook. And start tonight. Even if you don't have a journal, just start getting a piece of paper and start writing this out every night. Follow the process that we're learning here today with Carl. And we'll keep this conversation going in the Amplify Your Success community. Carl, you're invited to join us over there and really start having an ongoing conversation about how we use these tools and how we can reprogram our subconscious mind. And I want to hear what's the thing you're working on? What are you putting into action? Come share it over there in the thread this week and tell us what you're working on reprogramming. So Carl, thank you for being here today. And I appreciate that you're bringing this work to the world.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Melanie. And I appreciate you assisting me in getting this important message out to everyone.
You got it. This is Melanie Benson, your host. Thanks so much for listening in today. If you want to catch up on any of the show notes and circle back on any of the resources we shared in today's show, head on over to the show page at amplifyyoursuccesspodcast.com. And remember, you amplify your results faster when you're in a community of other people who are moving and shaking. Join us at amplifyyoursuccesscommunity.com. One last thing. When you've gained insight from today's episode, help us share that and inspire other people by heading over to iTunes, subscribing, and give it a review. iTunes absolutely loves seeing these reviews pop up, and it actually helps boost my show's visibility. So I would be super grateful for your reviews. And as always, I love seeing your shares of these episodes on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Come find me over there. Tag me in your shares. I'll give you some social media love right back. So see you next week for another inspiring episode of Amplify Your Success Podcast.